Nebraska dominates Oregon State from start to finish in an 84-63 victory. Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. My name is Blake, here with co-host Mike on the other side. Mike, what is going on today?
Not a whole lot. Just recovering. This weekend must have been rough on my immune system. I don't know. A little under the weather, but hopefully the voice isn't too poor and that comes across halfway decently. But yeah, just excited to see the Huskers be 5-0, ready to see what they can do this week, you know.
And it looks like we had a little bit of commotion on you sharing the big news last week. I heard friends and family might have just been notified for the first time.
Yeah. My brother reached out and said, that's, giving me some shit. That's a funny way to find that out. But then my sister responded and said, whoa. He has a podcast, which I had not shared with her that I have a podcast because she's not a massive Nebraska basketball fan, but maybe she's listening to this one, so who knows? Yeah, no, pretty funny responses from the family though.
So, Mike, Nebraska walks into the Pentagon here this past weekend and absolutely dominates the Beavers. Outside of the first 4 minutes there, where Pope kind of did whatever he wanted to our defense, it was all Nebraska from that point on.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall a more dominant Nebraska performance. I can't remember the last time I've seen Nebraska dominate an opponent that much. I mean, like you said, the first 4 minutes, Pope looked good. I know we had talked about him in the preview. He's a walking bucket. He can do what he wants, but starting about 15 minutes left in the first half, the defense really came alive. The offense came alive. At one point, we had a 20-0 run in the first half, which you can't do that without defense being there or offense being there. Very impressive showing from the Huskers.
And for those that were there for the Tim Miles experience, everybody remembers runs not being a good thing. It was typically about a 7-minute Tim Miles scoring drought combined with about a 17-0 opponent run on us, So a little scar tissue there, but no longer, as Nebraska filled with offensive weapons up and down the starting lineup and the bench. So starting right out of the gate, Nebraska with 25 bench points, and I don't have any numbers in front of me in correlation to the Big Ten, but you got to think that leads or is very close to leading the Big Ten in that category.
Yeah, I can't imagine many other teams have a bench that puts as many points up as we do. It helps when you got Juwan Gary coming in off the bench. I think he ended up with, how many points did he have today? 12 points. He had a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds off the bench. I think he's vying for maybe starting minutes. I don't know. Obviously that's up to Fred, but any of those three main front court guys, Mast, Alec, or Juwan Gary, very impressive. I think they combined for 35 points and 27 rebounds. Just pure domination from those guys. Very impressive.
Fred had a comment on the play of the front court and was very excited with how they performed against Oregon State.
Again, Bryce, the last two games has really been in a good rhythm offensively. Second half, I think he had 16 in the second half against Stony Brook, and then to carry that over for a 25-point night. And then, Joe just does every little thing, dirty work. Jawan, gave us another really solid effort with a double-double. And just, really pleased with, overall what we did from top to bottom.
So Mast goes for 15, 13, and 2, getting his third double-double of the year. And he found 6 offensive rebounds as well, so did a really good job on the backside when their shot blocker rotate over for help defense. Mast was always there. Same deal with Gary, goes for 12, 10, and 2, gets his first double-double of the season, hits a three-pointer, 1 for 4 on his three-point attempts. And it looks like he has the green light to shoot from outside all year, Mike.
Yeah, I think that's a big addition to his offense. I think everyone knows that he has no problem getting to the hoop and scoring inside the 3-point arc. But if he has added that shot for real, I think he's shooting somewhere around 37% on the season, like 3 for 8. So if that's for real and he can keep up that pace, I think that would really, really help out the Huskers. Just another guy you can go to really stretch out the defense. I know we had talked about Mast being able to do that, but if Gary provides that too, I think it's just going to be that much more deadly on the offensive side.
The point guard play has seen a drastic improvement, at least based on the last game. Lawrence going for 3, 5, and 3. Now, he hasn't shot as well as he did last year. His three-point ball not looking as great, but had a really nice and one. And is maturing as a point guard, had 0 turnovers. On the flip side of it, Boogie gets 14 minutes and logs 3 assists in short time, also with 0 turnovers, and the offense ran really well with him as he went in there in the mid to late first half. And it looked like Fred started to trust him a little bit more running the offense. So the big key here that I think we saw the most development in Nebraska basketball here on the season is we had 16 assists to 6 turnovers. So, the facilitation of the offense has improved drastically, and Fred was very excited about it and had a quote to share.
The other thing I'm really proud of is 16 assists, 6 turnovers. We've been struggling in that area, turning the ball over too much. So, to really take care of it and turn them over and get those extra possessions, when you get that many extra shots at it, you got a pretty good chance of winning the game.
Mike, the rebounding has been dominant so far from what we've seen out of these Huskers. And if we can perform well without turning the ball over, the sky's the limit for this team.
Yeah, I know you mentioned rebounding there. This is the 4th straight game with a 10 rebounding margin. We're plus 10 in rebounding. I think that's just, if we can continue to do that coming into conference play, coming into Big Ten ball, obviously I think it'll get a little harder, higher quality opponent. Big Ten teams typically have some pretty big boys inside, but if we can continue to do that, that's the best way to win. Rebound and assist, and I think this team's pretty well set up to do that.
Rebounding on both sides of the ball has been really well this year, but it has to be highlighted against Oregon State because they had a couple really, really tall players in the front court. I think one of them was 7'2", and I think they had another close to 7-foot guy that didn't seem to deter Mast or Gary or even Bryce Williams down low. We have a lot of guys that can go attack rebounds. Fred said that they kind of have 2 guys assigned on every single offensive play to crash the offensive glass based on the lineup they have out there. So rebounding has been spectacular. The help side defense has been great. Our opponents, especially the Beavers, struggled driving anything inside. So really well formulated defense by the Huskers as well. And it seems like everyone is just starting to fill into their role on this team and understand what they need to do to succeed. We're going 9 deep without what appears to be any kind of drop off.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive. And I know we'd talked off the podcast. I think the biggest thing for me is seeing Casey Tominaga being plus 19. I know he's always kind of, he has no problem scoring, but it's always kind of been a question mark on defense. I know there was one unfortunate play where he left his ankles about 5 feet from the rim and they got shattered. But if he can continue to be plus 19, if he can continue to improve on the defensive end, I think they're playing really good defense as a unit. As you said, kind of forcing things inside, getting tough shots. The front court players doing what they need to do to contest things. And I love to see that. I think, Fred's said it's consistent, and I think it's going to be a consistent thing throughout this season. Seeing, I think we're 33rd on Bart Torvik right now, 41st on Ken Palm for defense. That's really, really impressive, especially for a Fred Hoiberg team that most people probably didn't consider being that great defensively this year.
So speaking to defense, again, you mentioned Tominaga with a plus-minus of 19. I was in the building at the Sanford Pentagon, and when I tell you, it was probably about the loudest crowd pop I've ever heard in my life when he made that second 3. He still brings the wow factor to the fans, and it's so fun to watch him play. He's almost worth the ticket of admission by himself. Now, the big thing here is that from what I saw in person, it felt to me like he played within the offense much better. He's kind of starting to understand that the shot volume isn't going to come from 50 shots from Tominaga. It's going to be a distributed offensive scoring attack, and he's there to, provide a spark if we need it.
Yeah, I mean, he only had 6 shots on the night. He went 3 for 6, made 2 for 3 from deep. So if he can be that guy that, like you said, kind of gives a spark when they need it, hands the ball off. I mean, Bryce Williams has taken 17 shots. Juwan Gary's taken 10. Rink Mast with 12 shots. Those aren't bad guys to be taking shots. I think he has a little bit more help this year compared to maybe last year on the offensive end. And that speaks to a unit, not necessarily the quality of players, but the way that Fred has these guys playing. I think we got a lot more threats, a lot better looks this year. And like you said, maybe the quantity isn't there, but as long as the shot quality is still there, that'll be great for Tominaga.
And Mike, Bryce Williams going for 25, 3, and 2, shooting 53% from the field. This guy, is he our best player?
Arguably, he might be. I think he's got 41 points through the last game and a half. I mean, 41 points in 60 minutes. That's an incredible pace. I think he's showed so far. Obviously, like I said, he's shooting somewhere around 37% from three, scoring outside, but he's scoring inside too. He's got a smooth mid-range jumper. I know he had a little ISO ball there towards the end of the half, a little fadeaway mid-range jumper that just looked so clean with it. I think he's definitely in the discussion for our best player. What say you?
Yeah, Mike, I think Bryce Williams has the most versatility of anybody on our roster and probably within the starting five. I think Mast has been an absolute machine down low, being the double threat that he is, always tends to contribute a lot to what we bring onto the floor. But Bryce Williams seems to be a guy that's going to probably be our leading scorer. He seems to have the most volume to his game, doesn't always shoot the most efficiently, did well at Oregon State, but I think he's going to end the season as our leading scorer, I would venture to guess. But one more thing of note before we kind of wrap up the Oregon State review. The Pentagon is an absolutely amazing venue for college basketball. I know they do a couple D1 games in there every year, but it's beautiful, it's intimate, it's very loud, and it's close to home. If Nebraska has the opportunity to get back there once every 2 or 3 years, I think we should absolutely do it. And had the Nebraska-Wisconsin football game not interfered with what would have been a great attendance, it would have been a sold-out Pentagon for the Huskers. And just based on the capacity being about 60% of what it probably could have done, it would have been a stellar environment if it was a sellout. So I hope the Huskers find a way to get back there soon. So Nebraska, to wrapping it up, shoots 46% from the field on 30 of 65 shooting, 33% from three-point land on 8 of 24, and only shot 62% from free throws, so another free throw issue. But I think 4 misses came when we got into our late bench clear out, so not nearly as bad as what the numbers probably show. We hold Oregon State to 35% shooting from the field on 19 of 54, 27% from 3 on 6 of 22, and they shoot 90% from the free throw line, 19 of 21. As you mentioned, they get out-rebounded 44-31, so a really good showing on the glass from the Huskers. So moving into Duquesne a little bit, they are as we sit tonight, the 83rd ranked team in KenPom. They were preseason picked 4th in the A10, so a team that has some expectation behind them. Started off to a 4-1 record this year with wins against Stony Brook 85-63. They beat Rider 77-58, so a larger margin than Nebraska was able to pull off at home. And they had a tough loss to number 68 KenPom Princeton 70-67, where they had an opportunity at the end of the game to take the lead and unfortunately missed it. So 4-1 record for Duquesne. They rank 83rd in overall KenPom. Offense ranks 69th and defense ranks 113th. They play at the 171st ranked tempo, so they're not going to fluctuate too much from what a standard pace would be. The three-point defense now ranks 249th in the country, so they struggle at defending the three, but they have a strength inside where they rank 21st in blocking defense. So they play really good post defense. We're going to struggle to get it inside. I'll be interested to see how Mast and Gary respond to their post presence. Mike, what do you think is going to be the key to having a good game against Duquesne?
Yeah, I think we'll get into their players here in a bit. I know you did some scouting on them, but just looking at them as a team, I know they shoot 46.5%, 47% of their shot attempts are from threes. So this is a team that likes to take a lot of threes. But when you look at the Huskers right now, are holding teams to shooting 23% from three. So that's the matchup that I'm watching personally. It looks like they shoot about 37% from three. That's good for 79th in the country. So pretty well above average, but the Huskers 3-point defense versus what Duquesne's trying to do, they're going to shoot a lot of threes. If we can close out, make those tough contested looks and kind of win that battle, I think that gives the Huskers a pretty good chance to come out victorious.
Yeah, so they are shooting. They shoot the three on 47% of their offensive possession. So, like you said, they are going to let the ball fly. And they move the ball well, having an assist on 54% of their made field goals this year. So they move the ball well, going to shoot the three a lot, probably working a lot of inside to out. They have a couple elite guards in Day Grant, a 6'2" senior, averaging 23 and 2. He's shooting 39% from the field and 35% from behind the three-point line. He's a volume shooter, probably their go-to guy, and the one head of the two-headed beast, other guy being Jimmy Clark, a 6'3" senior who's averaging 18, 3, and 4, so passing a little bit better out of that side of things. Shooting 49% from the field, 35% from three. He's more of a versatile guard. He likes to drive, kicks out, and he can pass really well.
Yeah, and I think those are the two guys that we kind of have to key in on. They're going to them over 25% of their possessions are those two guys individually. So over half their possessions are ending up with those two guys taking the shot. One thing that I do want to note is that Jimmy Clark is averaging 6.8 on his. That's a steal percentage. That's good for 17th in the country. I know we've had a little bit of a turnover issue. We righted that a bit against Oregon State, but it's interesting to see. He's going to bring a little bit of pressure. He's going to try to poke that ball away. See how the guards handle that sort of pressure.
The offense is run by a 5'9 sophomore, Kareem Rozier, averaging 10, 3, and 4. Takes really good care of the ball, has a 4-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, and he's shooting 46% from the field and 48% from three. So he's going to be their biggest threat from deep. I know they shoot a lot of threes. If they can, they're going to look to get it into his hand as much as they can for a perimeter shot. They have two forwards, Fusanye Drame, a 6'7 senior, averaging 9, 8, and 1. This guy's a transfer from LaSalle. He's shooting an amazing 74% from the field and has made all three of the three-pointers he's attempted this season. He's kind of their power rebounder, gets a lot of rebound putbacks, leading to a 74% field shooting percentage from the field. So got to look out for him. Make sure we box him out. Going to be a presence inside. Obviously very good at blocking the ball with their front court. They also have a 6'9 senior named David Dixon. 6'9 sophomore, averaging 2, 4, and 1. He's averaging 2 blocks a game. Not much of an offensive threat, but provides a huge presence inside on defense. They'll have another sixth guy that comes in, Andrei Savrasov. Sorry, I didn't know my Russian there. Andrei Savrasov. 6'7 senior, averaging 7, 4, and 1, shooting 44% from the field. Again, another power rebounder. Can score a little bit. He was a second-team All-Sun Belt player at Georgia Southern, transferring in to play for Duquesne this year. Mike, after kind of looking through Duquesne and what they bring to the table, I don't want to say that I'm super scared of what they bring to the table as much as their initial, 83rd Ken Palm rank would lead a guy to believe. But we're going to have to make sure that we keep Day and Jimmy in check, because those guys, if they get hot, it might be a long game for us.
Yeah, and like I had said earlier, if they can start knocking down threes and our defense isn't there, I think it's, like you said, it's going to be a long day. Interesting to see. I know we've talked about the defense being a consistent source of an advantage for the Huskers. It's a constant that Fred wants to be there. I think this is their first real test to see if that's a way that we can try to compete and win games. If we're going to be a defense first team, I think this game's going to show us a lot about that. They are a 69th, as you had mentioned, in the Ken Palm ranking in offense. So a top 70 offense, nothing too incredible. It's not, a Purdue or something like that, or any of these other super high scoring teams, super impressive teams, but definitely something that you have to be mindful of. And it's going to be a good test for us. I'm excited to see what kind of defensive game plan Fred comes up with and how the boys execute it.
One little side note that I found very intriguing, they attack the offensive glass very aggressively, but not so much the defensive glass. They rank 230th in defensive rebounding, which I think should play to our strengths a little bit. We've been offensive rebounding at a great clip this year, so got to look for Gary, for Alec, for Mass to really attack the offensive glass as much as they can, because I think they like to get back on defense. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But I think this is going to be our toughest test yet. These guys are going to have the best guard play that we've seen so far. We're going to have to defend well on the perimeter and convert our threes. They don't defend the three well, so we got to make sure that we can knock them down. So look for guys like Wilcher and Tominaga to potentially take the lid off this thing and get hot early and get the Huskers off to a big lead. We're projected to a 77-70 win on Ken Palm and a 78-71 win on Bart Torvik, which would give us a projected spread of about 6.5. Mike, are you going to lay the points with us here on Wednesday?
Yeah, I'm looking at their Ken Palm page over here too. It's funny that you just mentioned rebounds, because one thing I wanted to say is they're actually 321st in average height, so they're not a very tall team. Pretty short, and I think the guys, as you had mentioned, if we're sending two guys after offensive rebounds, they struggle giving up offensive rebounds on their poor defensive rebounding team. That helps our offensive rebounding. I think the guys are going to take advantage of that. I think we'll get a good many points off some putbacks, off some second chance points. I will lay the points. I think the defense, I've been convinced, after the slow-ish start against Oregon State, seeing Pope come out and drain a couple buckets, but then the clamps being put on, I felt that the defense really got Oregon State out of what they wanted to do. Typically, they're kind of a slower paced team. I know in the second half, it's a little different when you're down by a lot, but there were some quick shots being taken by Oregon State. And I think that just speaks to what the Huskers' game plan was, what they wanted to do, kind of get Oregon State out of the rhythm. I think they have a good chance to do that against Duquesne. I think the 3-point defense is going to be there. It's going to show up. I will lay the points. I think the Huskers, I like them for a double-digit win, personally.
I tend to agree. I think I'm going to lay the 6.5 if that's what it ends up being. Obviously, lines aren't out yet, but I'll lay the 6.5. I think our elite defense, I believe we're second in effective field goal percentage defense right now. So defense has been, at an elite level so far this year. Our rebounding, I think, is going to be better than theirs. I think we'll box out well on the defensive side. And, as you mentioned, as a lack of height on the offensive boards, we should be able to get quite a few second chance points down low. I think the crowd's going to play a role in this. I think around Lincoln, you've got some excitement around this program after this first 5-0 start in over a decade. So, it is close to Thanksgiving, so we might not see quite the crowd we're expecting, but I think a lot of people are going to show up to this one to support the Huskers. So between the defense rebounding and what should be a little bit of an energetic crowd, I'm going to project a 76-66 win and a cover for the Huskers. Mike, do you want to kind of break down what Fullerton's looking like here coming up?
Yeah. After Duquesne, the next game we got coming up is Cal State Fullerton on the 26th. That's, with the holiday weekend coming up, we just kind of wanted to condense these two. So looking ahead to Fullerton, they are 212th KenPom overall, so quite a drastic difference between them and Duquesne here. 256 on offense, 146 on defense, and 173rd on tempo. So pretty much average on tempo. Their offense is pretty well below average, though, which, seeing as the Huskers defense has performed recently, might be some cause for concern if you're a Cal State Fullerton fan. A couple things to note from them. They have a really, really high turnover percentage. So that's how many of their possessions end up with a turnover. They're sitting at 23.5% of their possessions are ending in a turnover. That's 341st in the country. There's only 362 eligible teams. We're talking there in the fifth percentile. It's pretty bad. Obviously, it's something Husker fans may know a little bit about turnovers, but we're not quite that bad. So that's one thing that I found interesting. One of the other things that I found, it seems like they like to share the ball. They pass the ball a lot. They're actually getting assists on 41% of their made buckets. So they do pass the ball around a lot. They work it pretty well. I think they have 2 or 3 guys that we kind of have to look out for. Max Jones and DJ Bruton. I can get into them a little bit. I don't know if you have any thoughts about them first, Blake.
Yeah, Mike, I don't think Cal State Fullerton is going to be much of a scare for us. Like you mentioned, Max Jones averaging 16-4-2, DJ Bruton 13-5-5. So Bruton a little bit more of a passer and rebounder. Bruton shooting 40% from the field, but he does not have a 3-point shot at all. I think he's shooting less than 20% from 3, so not much of a threat out there. Max Jones on the other side, shooting 34% from the field and 27% from 3. So I don't see a lot of threat in this team. They're 2-3. They had a nice win tonight against Southern Miss in the consolation game over in Jacksonville. But they've lost by double digits to number 20 San Diego State, number 64 UCF, and number 101 Cornell. So I don't imagine this team posing any kind of threat to the Huskers, really. Like you said, they turn the ball over. They don't take care of it. They don't shoot well. They don't defend well. This team really isn't good at anything, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The one lone bright spot that I had, as I had mentioned, they do have quite a few assists per made buckets, and they do actually shoot the free throw pretty well. They're 74% as a team, which isn't anything too incredible. It's above average, but just kind of looking for bright spots. We had mentioned, Max Jones and Bruton, a couple other guys in their most used lineup here. Grayson Carper, this guy plays, I think I got him for 73% of their minutes. So he's playing, about 30 minutes a game, somewhere around there. Guy doesn't really come out a lot. He's averages 7, 6, and 1, 37% from the field, 30% from 3. So maybe their best 3-point shooter, but still nothing too crazy. Actually, I take that back. They do have one other guy, Beryl Kabamba. He's a 6'5" junior forward. He's not on the starting lineup, but he comes in. He plays about as much as their starter. Their starter is John Mikey Square. He Kabamba actually plays more minutes than him, but Square's typically their starter. I'll leave that up to the coach to decide. But Kabamba shoots 50% from the field, but 42 or 43% from three. He's only 3 for 7, so pretty small sample size on that. Dude doesn't shoot a lot of threes. 50% from the field. He does a lot of his work inside. As you'd mentioned, though, this isn't a team that does very much of anything well. They were picked to finish 6th in the Big West this year out of 11, so pretty middle of the pack in the Big West. They're a poor rebounding team, a lot of turnovers. I think that leads us to getting easy buckets, or whether that's runouts off of rebounds, defensive rebounds if they're trying to crash the glass, or easy putbacks, or off those turnovers, easy runouts for us. One thing that I did notice, they play a pretty small lineup for a good portion. As I had mentioned, their forwards don't play much. With that John Mikey playing, 17% of the minutes, Kabamba playing 40%. One guy I hadn't mentioned yet is Vincent Lee. He plays their 5 for the most part, plays 43% of the minutes. So it's not a lot. It's not a big lineup. They rotate their guards in quite a bit, in the 1 through 4. They maybe have a small forward playing the 4 a lot. So if you're a Husker fan, maybe look forward to our front court having a pretty dominant game against Cal State.
So based on the projections, KenPom as it sits right now, obviously a lot of games to be played yet. We haven't played Duquesne at this point. So KenPom projects us to a 78-63 win, which would lead you to a 15-point spread. And Bart Torvik has us at a 67 or 76-63 win. So that would lead to about a 13.5-point spread. So we'll just set it at 14. Mike, are you going to lay the 14?
I'm kind of at the point right now where I'm just going to ride with the Huskers. I think they've beaten the spread. I mean, maybe they might be 4-1 against the spread. I don't think Vegas necessarily knows, or even Bart Torvik or KenPom necessarily has their models quite to where the Huskers are at. I think the Huskers are going to have another good showing. Eventually, they're probably going to let me down, but until that happens, I think I'm going to feel comfortable laying the points. As we had mentioned, this Cal State team isn't very good. I think we'll manage to get some easy buckets and kind of run away with it.
I agree with you. I'm going to lay the 14. I actually think the Huskers explode on this game. To your point, I'm not sure that a lot of these analytical websites have really, weighed in the fact that we're going 9 deep and we're getting fresh legs out there all the time. A lot of these teams that we've played to this point don't have the bench that we do, so we can kind of outrun them on rebounds, on fast break points, and have a lot more energy in the post for defense when necessary. So I'm going to project actually a blowout win for the Huskers against Fullerton, 86-61. I think it's absolute domination. I don't really see them threatening us at all. If they end up shooting a lot of free throws, and that's where most of their points are going to come from, I'm really not too concerned about the spread in that one. So.
Yeah, I think it's probably, I wouldn't doubt it being a blowout. I'm excited to see what the Huskers do after this big Duquesne game, see if they come out with a win against them, how they get mentally prepared. I think maybe as it goes on, it's easy to look forward to the big in-state game against Creighton, which would be the next game after Cal State Fullerton. Hopefully not a letdown in store. Hopefully they keep it rolling, but we'll see.
And do you think our defense, Mike, is it actually as elite as some of the metrics think it is, or is it a product of the lack of offensive threat on our schedule?
I'm pretty comfortable to say I think it's better. I don't know if you want to call it elite at this point. I mean, you did say we're number 2 in effective field goal percentage, which would be elite, that's for sure. I think our defense is definitely well above average. I think we obviously haven't played the highest quality opponent, but Oregon State had a couple guys that could get buckets, as we had mentioned in the preview. Even in the first 4 minutes, Jordan Pope was doing what he wanted. But yeah, and one more thing that I just wanted to get your opinion on. One thing that I think Fred Hoiberg teams have always been known for is shooting a lot of threes. That's something that this team is no different from. We're actually attempting a 3 on 48% of our free field goal attempts. So that's good for 23rd in the country. Very high clip that we're shooting threes at. But at the same time, we're only making 33% of them, which is pretty median, pretty much average as far as D1 goes. Do you think that rate either comes down if we're not making more threes, or do you think the guys start making more threes at a higher rate, maybe push that percentage up to closer to 35-36%?
I think anytime we break out on a defensive rebound and try to push the tempo, I think the guys are always hunting a 3. So I think that's part of what is a product of that high 3-point percentage number of attempts. I think those guys are always hunting a perimeter shot. And I think that's what Fred kind of teaches within that offense. Now, in the half court, I'd like to see a little bit more of an inside game. Mast has shown that he has really good touch around the basket, very, very capable. And like we always talk about, can stretch the defense as well. But I'd like to see a little bit more interior involvement on offense. I think, you've got some guys that can finish well inside. Bryce has shown that he can drive at a very successful clip. I think Tominaga, as we saw last year, as magical around the rim. He was coined a magician by multiple commentators throughout our game. So I think there's a lot of talent that maybe we haven't, put any emphasis on inside that is available within our roster. I'd like to see it come down, but at the same clip, if we're going to end up getting up to 36, 37% from three as a team, I don't know why you'd ever withdraw the attempts. So it's to be seen. I think we just need to get the 3-point make percentage up a little bit. And I think early season, we haven't shot the three at nearly what is capable of our roster. So I expect that number to go up.
Yeah. And just one last thing. I know we had mentioned Jawan Gary shooting the three earlier. And that wasn't a big part of his game. And that's something that he's added. Do you think that's here to stay? He's shooting at about, I think he's pretty average. Let me see if I can pull his number real quick. Jawan Gary, yeah, he's shooting. Okay, he's actually shooting 37.5%. He's 3 for 8. Do you think he can keep that up? Is that a part of his game that's here to stay? As you'd mentioned, you think he has the green light? Do you think he can keep up that rate, that make percentage?
I don't know that he can shoot it at that clip. Fred has said in his press conferences that the shoulder surgery that he underwent here this past year actually really gave him a lot of time to work on his shot and has helped his balance within his jumper. So I think actually injury has done him a really big favor in terms of developing his shot into a spot where he has confidence to shoot from three. I'm not sure that he had a full green light last year to shoot that, but he's worked with Fred, all off season, pretty much all year last year as for what was available of him to actually practice post-surgery. So can he continue at that effective of a clip? I sure hope so, because that, would lend to even more bigs being dragged out onto the perimeter. I don't think he'll keep that pace going, but I do think he's going to have the green light the rest of the year. So, moving into the most, exciting part, I think, of this podcast, the bracketology updates here. We're on November 20th, and these numbers, Mike, just keep getting better and better and better with every episode. We're up to 34 in the net, 45th in ESPN BPI, 46th in KenPom, up from, I think we started the year in the high 50s, so we've had a 10-spot rise already. Bart Torvik, very high on the Huskers, as we've mentioned, up to 33 in his rankings. Team ranking has us at 51st. Now, very exciting, Mike. Bart Torvik here has us at a 75.7% chance of a berth and projected to a 9 seed in the tournament. What say you about that?
Well, I think that's incredible. I think for me personally, the almost 8% chance for an auto bid, that's talking about us winning the Big Ten tourney. That's kind of crazy to think about as well. 76% now is what we're talking. I know that's up from the last time you asked me. I love that you keep asking me. And every time it gets a little bit harder to say that I'm not buying in, especially with a dominant performance like we saw against Oregon State. I think I'll have a lot better answer for you after, this week, and specifically after the Creighton game coming up. Then I think I might be feeling a little more comfortable 8 games in as opposed to 5, but I love to hear it. I love that we're moving the right direction. I can't believe Bart Torvik has that 33. Some may say overrated. Who's to say? But I think it's incredibly exciting, and I can't lie. I'm starting to buy in a little bit more every time you ask me.
The pessimist is even buying in a little bit.
So, buying in a little bit more every time.
Bart has us, as a matter of fact, as it sits tonight on November 20th, as the 3rd best team in the Big Ten. So very interesting as well. As you've kind of seen on Twitter, Andy Katz slotted us at 35th in his Power 36 today. A couple of their national writers are kind of talking about Fred Hoiberg. So we're gaining a little momentum on the national scene. So always exciting to see. Bouncing into the Big Ten real quick, just running through a couple of results here. Minnesota blows a 20-point lead at home to the number 84th team in KenPom, Missouri, 70-68. Garcia goes for 16-9-3, Carrington for 6-13-2. But, Mike, that's a really tough loss for the Gophers, who saw some early season momentum.
That's like you said, that's a tough loss. Anytime you blow a massive lead like that, that's something that can send some reverberations down the season. That's something where even your team's not even feeling secure with a big lead. So hopefully they can right the ship up there in Minneapolis. But we'll see. We'll see what that brings. See if the team loses a little bit of confidence, or if they can get it figured out.
Elsewhere on the downside of things, Maryland continues to look really tough at the start of the season. They get shut down offensively by number 26 Villanova, losing 57-40. And Mike, they only scored 15 points in the first half. What is going on in College Park?
I wish I had an answer for you. I don't know if it's because Villanova's that good of a team or what. I'm not necessarily that high on Villanova this year, but definitely a very, very poor showing from Maryland. Maybe a little overrated coming into the season, and now we're seeing their true colors.
Michigan loses a shocker at home after a lot of early season momentum to Long Beach State, who's 93rd in Ken Palm. They're 15-point favorites, Mike, in this game, and they lose 94-86.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you can't give up 94 points at home to Long Beach State. Quite frankly, I think that's an indictment on their defense. That's not going to get it done against anybody. Long Beach State, they might be in the Big West, but as you said, 94th in Ken Palm. So not a terrible team by any means, but not a team Michigan should be losing to at home.
Rounding out the bad side of the ledger, Indiana gets dominated by the third-ranked UConn team, defending national title champions. They lose 77-57. They held Ware in check for only 11 points on 2 of 10 shooting at Madison Square Garden. And Northwestern drops their first game of the season to Mississippi State 66-57 in the Hall of Fame tip-off. Boo Buie and Barnheiser combined for only 22 points, and Northwestern only has 8 bench points in that game. So, Mike, a couple tough losses there. Indiana, I don't think anyone's surprised losing to a really good UConn team, but Northwestern had a chance to make a statement against Mississippi State and faltered.
Yeah, and as you had mentioned, the lack of bench points there, I think that just kind of shows a little bit of a difference between what Northwestern's got going on, kind of relying on 1 or 2 guys, especially Boo Buie, dude's been there for 20 years, to get a vast majority of their points, whereas the Huskers, as we had mentioned, go 8, 9 deep. It just goes to show the importance of depth. If somebody's having an off night, always good to have somebody else that can step up. So, as you'd mentioned, a tough loss for the Wildcats. A good opportunity to make a statement, but definitely don't sleep on the team in Evanston. I know if Boo Buie gets hot, if he does have a good night shooting, they're definitely good enough to beat anybody.
Illinois survives a big scare after being down 45-38 at half, comes back and beats a horrific Valparaiso team who catches in at 3:35 in Ken Palm. They win that game 87-64. So a second half explosion. Shannon Jr. goes for 22, 7, and 4. But Mike, Illinois, after that tough loss to Marquette, they came in sleepwalking to this one.
Yeah, a bit of a like you said, sleepwalking, almost a bit of a letdown there. Glad to see that they could turn it around. Don't need as fun as it is to see other teams in the Big Ten lose generally. We do need the conference to have some respect from the national media if the Huskers want to have an at-large bid possible. So gotta cheer for a win every once in a while. Good to see them actually pull one out.
Couple big wins on the other side of the ledger, like I mentioned. Michigan State handles a pretty good Butler team, 77th in Ken Palm, beat them 74-54. Tyson Walker scores 21. Hogarth goes for 14, 6, and 4, but again, only 10 bench points for the Spartans in that game. Purdue beats number 9 Gonzaga tonight, 73-63. Edey goes for 25 and 14, so another monster stat line from Edey, and a huge win for Purdue there. Wisconsin then rounding it out, beats number 39 Virginia, 65-41. Crowell gets a double-double, has 15 and 10. Wisconsin only has 8 bench points. So I think a common denominator amongst Nebraska against all these teams, again, we have the deepest bench in this conference, I don't think, bar none. We're averaging 25 bench points a night, so I wouldn't look to any one guy with us, but a couple really, really, really big wins for the Big Ten there, and it was much needed, Mike.
Yeah, very much needed. I know you had mentioned their Ken Palm rankings, but Gonzaga was ranked 11th, and Virginia was actually a top 25 team in the polls. So maybe not maybe they're a little overrated in the polls, as you'd mentioned. They're 39th in Ken Palm, but big win for the Badgers, massive win for Purdue. We'll see if they can pull it off against a number 16 seed perhaps in March. But big win for them right now against Gonzaga, a Gonzaga team that's good year in, year out. Mark Few always has a great team. Monster night for media, as you had mentioned. The dude's trying to win back-to-back National Player of the Year. I don't know the last time or if anybody's ever done that, I guess. So big night, big showing for those two teams. Help out the conference a little bit for sure.
We've got a very big Thanksgiving week slate for the Big Ten. A lot of teams traveling around the country to different locales trying to get some big wins for this conference. So we'll have a lot back to report in the next episode, but let's really root on these Big Ten teams because, again, the last thing we need is to finish 7th in the Big Ten and get shut out for the dance simply because the Big Ten did not have a good non-conference slate. So let's root for these Big Ten teams. I think that's about all we got for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I imagine the next episode will be out most likely Wednesday. We have what should slate to be a pretty special surprise guest for the Creighton Meg episode. So don't want to disclose too much, but really looking forward to that. Excited for what that episode will look like and hoping that we're still undefeated getting to that point. Keep a lot of the momentum going. You can follow us on Twitter at Scarlet Shoot Pod. Me and Mike live tweet the games, so always a good follow during game time and kind of get the conversation going. We're on Instagram at Scarlet Shoot Pod, on Twitch for live streams, Scarlet Shoot Pod as well. You can email us at scarletshootaround@gmail.com. All kinds of different ways to get involved with us. And if you're interested in sponsoring us, to shoot us an email and we'll get with you and get you some ad spots on the show. So without further ado, very excited for what Nebraska is going to look like here with the first big test against Duquesne, Mike. Any final thoughts here as we head out?
Yeah, I guess just loving the momentum. I love what Fred had to say in his quote, how they handle success, whether they're going to come back hungry and still fight and claw and see if that defense, that consistent defense that we're hoping to see the rest of this year shows up against these next two opponents, especially Duquesne. As we had mentioned, quite a big test, maybe the biggest test of the year so far. So excited to see what the guys look like. Excited for, as you had mentioned, the little special surprise we have coming up in our next episode. I think Nebraska basketball is in a great place and excited to keep talking about them going forward.
So that should do it for our episode. Again, be on the lookout for the next drop here coming on Wednesday for the Creighton Meg episode. Really looking forward to the in-state rivalry and got to make sure we beat the blue Creighton Blue Jays. I cannot stand that color and I cannot stand that school. So for myself, Blake, and co-host Mike, we will see you soon. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.